Mark Cuban wasn't supposed to be a billionaire. He wasn't born into wealth. He didn't have an easy path to success. In fact, at one point, he was sleeping on the floor of a tiny apartment, surviving off cheap fast food and hustling just to make ends meet. And yet today, Mark Cuban is worth over $5 billion, owns the Dallas Mavericks, and is one of the most recognized entrepreneurs on the planet. So how did a kid from a working class family in Pittsburgh go from broke and jobless to selling a company for $5.7 billion in cash? And how did he turn that into an empire that stretches across sports, television, and tech? This is the real story of Mark Cuban, his struggles, his breakthroughs, and the moment that changed everything. Mark Cuban was born in 1958 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But from the very beginning, he had one goal: to make money. At just 12 years old, he started selling garbage bags door to door so he could afford a pair of expensive basketball shoes. By 16, he was flipping stamps and baseball cards, finding ways to spot undervalued assets and resell them for a profit, a skill that would later make him billions. But there was one thing Cuban didn't have: connections. He wasn't from a wealthy family, and he didn't have any special advantages. So when he got to Indiana University, he had to hustle just to stay in school. He taught dance lessons to pay tuition. He worked at a bar. He found any side hustle he could to make money, and that's where he learned one of his most valuable lessons. If you're willing to outwork everyone, you can win. After graduating, Cuban moved to Dallas, Texas, with almost nothing. No money, no job. Just a beat-up car and an obsession with making it big. He landed a job as a salesman at a computer company. But there was a problem. He didn't actually know anything about computers. So what did he do? He stayed up all night reading manuals, teaching himself everything about software and networking. That hunger to learn paid off. He was closing deals and making sales. But after just a few months, he got fired. Why? Because instead of opening the store one morning, he went to meet with a client. That could have been the end of his career. But it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to him. After getting fired, Cuban decided to start his own company, even though he had no money and no investors. In 1983, he launched Micro Solutions, a software and networking company. At first, it was just him hustling to find clients. But Cuban had a secret weapon: his ability to sell. He knew how to talk to people, how to build relationships, and most importantly, how to deliver results. In just a few years, he turned Micro Solutions into a multi-million-dollar business. And in 1990, he sold it for $6 million. At just 32 years old, Mark Cuban was officially a millionaire. He could have retired right there, but instead, he went bigger. In 1995, Cuban and his business partner Todd Wagner had an idea. What if you could stream audio over the internet? That may not sound groundbreaking today, but back then it was revolutionary. They launched broadcast.com, a platform that streamed live sporting events, news, and radio broadcasts over the internet. Within 4 years, the company exploded. And in 1999, at the height of the dot-com boom, Yahoo bought broadcast.com for $5.7 billion in stock. That was it. That was the game-changing moment that turned Mark Cuban from a millionaire into a billionaire overnight. And unlike most entrepreneurs at the time, Cuban did something incredibly smart. He sold his Yahoo stock before the dot-com crash, cashing out at the perfect moment. At 41 years old, he was a self-made billionaire, and now he had the power to do whatever he wanted. For most billionaires, this is where the story ends. But for Mark Cuban, it was just getting started. In 2000, he made a bold move. He bought the Dallas Mavericks for $285 million. At the time, the Mavericks were a joke. They were one of the worst teams in the NBA, with empty arenas and no real fan base. Cuban changed everything. He upgraded facilities, built better training programs, and turned the team into a championship contender. Within a decade, the Mavericks won their first NBA championship, and Cuban transformed the franchise into a billion-dollar brand. But that wasn't all. In 2011, Cuban made another career-defining move. he joined Shark Tank. At first, people thought Cuban was just a celebrity investor, but he completely changed the show. He wasn't just writing checks, he was mentoring, guiding, and actively working with entrepreneurs. Since joining the show, he's invested in over 200 companies, backing businesses in tech, health, and consumer goods. And here's the crazy part. Many of those investments have gone on to make millions. Through Shark Tank, Cuban didn't just build his own portfolio, he became the face of entrepreneurship for an entire generation. Today, Mark Cuban is more than just a businessman. He's a visionary. He's a billionaire who gives back, funding startups, supporting medical research, and even launching Cost Plus Drugs, an online pharmacy aimed at lowering prescription drug prices. He's built an empire, transformed industries, and redefined what it means to be a self-made success. But the biggest lesson from Mark Cuban's journey: success isn't about where you start, it's about how hard you're willing to work. He didn't come from money. He wasn't given a shortcut. He outworked, outsmarted, and out-hustled everyone around him, and that's why he's one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time. So what do you think? Is Mark Cuban the smartest investor in Shark Tank history? Or is there another entrepreneur who deserves that title? Let me know in the comments. And if you love stories like this, check out my deep dive on Mr. Beast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another business breakdown. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.